Who was your first love? Do you remember who that was? He or she? I'm going to tell you who my first love was and what my first love was and how it's affected my entire fragrance journey for over 35 years. Coming up next. Do you remember your first love back in high school or whenever it was? Maybe it was college. I don't know. For me, it was 1985, 1986. I was 15, 16 years old. The girl, one of the most beautiful in my entire school. And this is straight out of a John Hughes movie from the 80s, high school movies. Remember John Hughes? For those of you who don't know, he did all these iconic 80s movies like Breakfast Club, and I think he did Ferris Bueller's, just a bunch of Pretty in Pink. Anyways, a bunch of those high school movies. And, excuse me, you go back to that time period and there was something very nostalgic, very pure, very innocent about kind of growing up in the 80s in high school. But my first love was very much like one of those movies. I was kind of the nerdy guy who did really well in school, and the girl that I was in love with was a popular, cheerleader, just, one that everybody wanted to date. Her parents were like the wealthiest parents in the school, lived in this beautiful home on a country club. This all classic 80s movie. I mean, I'm just thinking about it now. I'm like, I should have written a script. This could be like a great movie. Maybe I should. Maybe I will write something. I do like to write. Anyways, I digress. Let me get into this. I ordered a fragrance the other day online that I have not smelled since the late 80s, probably 1988, 89. So, you're going on a long time now. You're going on over 30 years that I've smelled this. I didn't even know if it was still around. Since I've gotten really deep into my fragrance journey in the last 4 or 5 years, I'm into all these new things. And, of course, I'm aware of great fragrances from the past. But this is one that I had essentially forgotten about until I started thinking about high school. And I started thinking about my fragrance journey and what really got me to this point. What made me start to fall in love with fragrance? I was trying to really deep down into my soul and figure out, where did I really get hooked for the first time? And I remembered it was this girl, Christy, back in high school here in South Florida in the mid 80s. And what was it that she wore? And I remembered in a second, remembered in 1 millisecond what she wore. And it was Anais Anais. Looks like Anais Anais. It's a French floral feminine perfume from the house of Cacharel. Okay. When this came out, it came out in 1978. This was, in the 80s, it was everywhere. This was like what every woman wore. You had certain fragrances that were ubiquitous, that were everywhere. This was one of them. And my friend Christy, again, she came from a very, very wealthy family, and her mom wore it. So then Christy started wearing it. And I remember, this takes me back. This is the amazing thing that right smell and fragrance can do. The sense of smell takes you immediately back to moments in your life that maybe you'd even forgotten about. I had forgotten about the times that I would go over to her house. And again, I did really well in school. She wasn't the best student. I would help tutor her. So I would go over there and I would maybe help teach her algebra or history or whatever it was. I remember sitting in her room and just studying and just smelling and being enveloped by this smell and just mesmerized. And this is what it was. It was Anais Anais. So I went online, and of course, I've actually seen it. You can buy it now. It's sometimes at Walgreens or CVS. They have it. I went to 2 of my local Walgreens. They both were out. And I'm like, I got to get this. So I went on Amazon and I ordered it. You can get this box here, about 50 mLs. It's 50 mLs. You can get it for a little under $30. I'm like, I got to try it for that price. I have to buy it. If it had been super expensive, I might have passed. I'm so glad I didn't. So here we go. Quick unboxing. It just comes in this nice floral little box, as you can see. Nothing fancy, but nice. You open it up, and out comes this bottle. You can see here, has the name Anais Anais. It says L'Original, the original. Apparently, if you read up on the history of this, it's been reformulated since the 80s. I don't know. I wasn't enough of a fragrance head when I was 15 or 16 to remember whether this is reformulated. It smells what I remember it like. I'm sure it's a little different. You know, everything's changed in 35 years. But to me, it smells just like it. The bottle is actually still kind of retro, cool, 80s, very French. This is very French looking. The top has this kind of plastic, looks like glass. It's plastic top. Got there. And you got the atomizer. Let me spray it. And I'll spray it so you can see my reaction here. All right. Oh, all right. I don't know if I'm the only one who still loves this fragrance, but to me, this is truly a wonderful, wonderful fragrance. It is, first of all, 4 perfumers worked on this fragrance. All right, 4. How often do you see that? Maybe I've seen some fragrances where there's 2 perfumers, 4 different perfumers worked on this. To me, that's like 4 great composers working on a symphony. And let's say they all compose different parts, maybe one in the beginning, you know, maybe the middle, an interlude, the end. So you have 4 unique personalities here that came together to blend this. Just on that fact alone, I find this fragrance very cool. It is definitely a floral feminine fragrance. This is not for men, but I've been wearing it the last couple of days and I enjoy it. Maybe it's because every time I smell it, I think of, it transports me immediately back to my high school crush's room and sitting there. It literally takes me in there. I can picture the bed. I can picture the photos. I can picture the carpet. I can picture the drapes. I can picture the wallpaper. Literally it all comes flooding back, all because of this smell of Anais Anais. And again, this reminds me of my first love. But I have something that's, upon thinking about that, this not only reminds me of my first love, meaning the first girl that I really crushed on, but this was also my first love of fragrances. First love. This signifies 2 first loves. My first girl that I loved and my first fragrance that I loved. Now, 35 years later, the girl, we're friends. That's it. You know, she went on to live this great life. She's married, kids, you know, we're friends. It's not like it was back then. But fragrance is still a love of my life. Fragrance is something hugely important in my life. So I have to thank that relationship back then, which led to this, which led to me in this journey of fragrance that we're all on and that I love. And it brings so much joy and happiness to my life. So what do I have to say about it? You can look up, I'm not going to go through all the notes. To me, that's kind of boring, just reading off a bunch of notes, but I will highlight a few of them. When the opening, again, is very floral. This is very French feminine floral. If you like over-the-top French feminine floral fragrances, this is for you. It has definitely got an 80s vibe, but I'm telling you, it works today. At least maybe, again, I'm biased. I'll admit it. Maybe I'm a little biased. For those of you who know this fragrance, let me hear your opinions, your commentary on this, because I don't know if I'm crazy, but to me, it still works. In fact, I'm going to give this to some friends of mine, some female friends. For this price, it's a great little gift, and I think it may be something that they actually like. But the top is really strong with this note of white lily and orange blossom. I love orange blossom. I love neroli, orange blossom, citrus. It's sweet. I don't think it's cloying. Some people I could see would probably say this is cloying, it's too sweet, it's too gourmandish. I don't think it goes that far. To me, it is a floral feminine, but not gourmand. And it's smooth. And it's blended with all these 4 perfumers working together in perfect harmony. Again, it's like a John Hughes 80s teen movie. It transports you back. This fragrance has the power to take you back. So for any of those of you who grew up in the 80s or even in the 90s, because it was still around and pretty popular then, I think this is going to transport you back and hopefully bring back some good memories for you. One of the other things I really like about it, just to kind of touch on one last thing about the smell, it ultimately dries down into this kind of more woody base, you know, sandalwood. But that sandalwood, this even at the top, comes across very creamy and powdery and almost soapy. I love soapy fragrances, soapy skin fragrances. And this led to another important revelation for me. My favorite smell is that almost smell of freshly showered skin, like when a woman has just showered and she has that fresh smell of soap, even before she puts on fragrance, just her natural body odor mixed with the soap is one of my favorite smells in all of the world. And this has that element. And the fragrances, the masculine fragrances that I wear, or the unisex, almost invariably, my favorite ones are that kind of soapy, incense, powdery fragrance. So now I can trace it all back again to Anais Anais. This was my first experience with fragrance. I didn't wear cologne up to that point. Shortly after that, I got my first bottle of Drakkar Noir, and also Polo Green, the original, and I wore those. But this was my first real experience in the world of perfumery. And it is now, 35 years later, left this indelible impression. It's imprinted on my brain and my nasal and olfactory system to favor soapy, powdery, incense fragrances. I mean, I owe this fragrance everything. I guess you could say I owe my friend Christy, who introduced me to this, who then introduced me to this love of fragrance. And what else can I say? I don't think there's much else I can say. I think you get it. I think you guys understand how important this fragrance was to me. And I want to hear from everyone out there. What fragrance do you have in your collection, or maybe not in your collection? And maybe now this has motivated you to think back to teenage years, or maybe your 20s, whenever, maybe younger. Maybe it's when you were a kid and one of your parents had a fragrance that it started you on your journey. I want to hear what fragrance started you on your journey, and what fragrance has that special recollection and memory for you that just makes your heart flutter, takes you back, transports you into a room 35 years ago when you could remember all the details surrounding you. What fragrance does that for you? Again, for me, it's Anais Anais, and I'm so glad I found it. And I'm so glad it's still in production, because who knows if it will be forever. It's changed names. The company's been bought out. It's been this, it's been that, it's been reformulated. I'm going to buy definitely at least a few bottles of this, because at $28, it's so worth it. And I want to make sure I have some of this for the rest of my life. So there you have it. Joel the Nose. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't subscribed, I'd ask that you please subscribe, because of course it helps me, keeps me motivated. And you can like the video if you found it entertaining or informative. And of course, you can always ring the bell for notifications. I'll be back soon with another video. Thanks for watching.